at 7:03 p.m. And I would invite all those present to rise and join me in the pledge of the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, there is no presentation that I know of tonight. I'm not aware of anything. So we'll move now to the public comment section, and our two members of the public know our process. 3 minutes, unpaused, and speak to us about whatever's on your mind.
Jack Callahan, 113 Arch Street. I'd like to ask Mr. Crabtree, are you with Crabtree?
Unfortunately, not Mr. Crabtree, but Mr. Cunningham.
Okay. Hey, I would like to know, how about a suggestion where, if the people could go along with it, if we could get a message board, where would you say to put that at this high school? You know what I mean?
Digital message display?
Well, whatever, yeah, whatever.
Like for the, on the street side traffic?
Yeah, probably there, and, you know, have it turned off at 11 o'clock so we don't bug nobody. But I mean, I wonder if, you know, sometime maybe get some paperwork and, you know, tell the people what's the best way or the best way to get one of those and do it. You know, every school I've been by, whether it's they do it manually or with a, you know, whatever, they have one. And I used to do it for over a year when we had the old school. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the first thing you need to do is we can look into the zoning ordinance and determine if there's any restrictions. A lot of municipalities restrict message displays, like for flashing and things like that, so just make sure we have restrictions on that and go from there. But certainly any of the street furniture would make sense.
Yeah, well, they originally at one time suggested putting on Broad Street out by the monuments, but that would be too gaudy, I would think, out there. And people might say, you know, nobody looks at it, which, I don't know, you're in a car, you don't have much chance. I know the one up to Williamsport High School, I doubt
Hey, Jack,
listen.
He would be happy to talk with you afterwards, I know. You're there to speak to us and address issues with us, okay?
Yeah,
that's okay, so,
I just think we ought to
but
have
hey, he's a fine man, he'll talk to you afterwards.
Yeah, fine. I just think we ought to have some message board here at the school for not only for people like me, but for anybody. If I see there's something driving by a school and they got PIAA, whatever, sports, or, you know, or class play, or whatever, because people don't advertise in the paper now, and you don't have the kids selling tickets downtown for the class play or anything ahead of time or whatever, and you know, and I think the people around the school would like to know what's going on if something's going on. So that's about it. So whatever you decide, or, you know, to talk about it or whatever, that's just my opinion.
Thank you, Jack, thank you.
So this will be brief. Brenda Oberheim, 192 Woodland Court. So it's my understanding that someone wants to switch the order of the vote pertaining to, you know, the order that the board votes in. I've been talking a little bit to some people about redistricting. A lot of times, and I think that that's happening in our area. Usually when someone, you know, throws a bomb on it and, you know, wants to redistrict, it's for some type of political gain. If we've always voted in a certain way, why would we switch it other than if someone would want someone else to vote prior to them or after them? So I guess I'm wondering which person wanted the order switched and what's really their intention. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, I see no one else approaching the podium, so we'll move now to, well, we don't have action items. At least I don't think we'll have an action item come out of it, of either item, but we have agenda items, and in particular, yeah, and let's flip-flop G2 and G1 if you don't mind. I emailed the board about how we do our roll call votes, because it's in the same alphabetical order every time. And essentially what it does is it puts, you know, first and second and third, it's in the same order every time. there's no, no one, that you don't rotate it to where the next person has to be the first to vote or the last to vote. And when I was at Clearfield, we did it this way. We rotated it. It's not unusual, and it's pretty common to actually rotate it. And for instance, Todd, the new guy in the block, he's the first to vote every time on a roll call vote item. Most of the time it doesn't matter, because we always pay the bills by roll call, and so that's not really much pressure there.
His vote does matter.
Huh?
His vote does matter.
No. No.
She doesn't even write it down.
Yeah, but, yes, so the budget, they're paying the bills, that's pretty routine. I'm thinking about any other special items that we just are gonna randomly rotate it so that, like tonight, well, we won't have something tonight, but like next meeting, Todd goes first on the budget item, paying the bills. Then, if there's no other roll call votes, that's it. Next meeting, then we shift it down one to where Dr. Beery would be the first vote. And you just keep doing that through the roll call votes. It's common. I thought it was unusual that Montoursville did it that way when I came here, but it's always been done that way. And just because something's always been done a certain way, we know that's not the reason you continue to do it. So I'm just suggesting, why not? Let's do that. I don't think it hurts anything, and there is no ulterior or motives behind it, anything like that. It's what I saw happening for 8 years on another board, and I know for a fact other boards do it that way. So I don't know, your thoughts, folks?
I have a couple thoughts. First of all, we're not in Clearfield, we're in Montoursville.
It's a board though, Ron.
And
That-
wait,
that-
let me finish.
Yeah, but why do you have to start at that? That's just a caustic
I
comment.
didn't interrupt you when you talked.
Yeah,
Don't
but
interrupt me.
I'm correcting you for being caustic
No,
like
nobody's
that.
correcting me.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, stop doing that kind of stuff, will you?
Well, I'm telling
It's a
you,
form of mockery.
This is Montoursville Area School District, and it isn't the House of Representatives or the Senate where we posture our vote, where, I'm waiting to see how everybody else votes to decide my vote. Because everybody here, all 9 board members, should vote the way they feel, no matter what anybody else votes. So the posturing doesn't need to be done on a school board.
Well,
And I think
I hope it's
that-
not done, I agree.
Well, and it just seems awful suspicious, what's going on here. I don't know what it is. I wish I did.
I've thought about this for years, honestly, Ron, I thought about it for years. When I first saw how it was done, I thought, huh. But then that's the way I did it for 8 years. So what I'm saying is that to rotate it like that means, and every time you have a roll call vote, it isn't the first person alphabetically who was the first to vote. You just shift it, and there's some equity in that, there's some fairness in that, if you will, just by shifting it every time the vote comes up, that's a roll call vote. But
Are you saying the vote's gonna be different by shifting?
I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying in terms of who votes first on any particular roll call vote, it shifts every time you have a new roll call vote, it drops down one in the alphabetical order or something like that. So there's nothing to be suspicious about. This is pretty random, actually. Just look at it like that. It's just random. It's something that's been on my mind for a long time, and I thought, agenda's light, I'm gonna throw it out there and see what people think. If the board, and we don't need a vote, it's a consensus thing, and if you're, Dave, don't worry about it, let's keep it the way it is, I'm fine with that. I'm just throwing it out there, but I am a little disgusted that there's implied sinister motives behind why I'd say it. That kind of stuff has to stop. We don't, it's very irritating to think there's some devious idea behind why I'm suggesting this. Anyway, the board, I'm just throwing it out there.
I don't understand one way or the other how this influences, if you did it one way or the other, if it's, it's some kind of motive, which there is none, at least, you recommended it. If Sue votes first, or Dale votes first, or Ron votes first, or anybody votes first, we're not influenced by that. I'm not influenced by anybody voting first. I mean,
I agree.
I'm not clear on where the motive is coming from and what the suspicion is. What is this, what's this, yeah, I can't even say it. But what is, where do you think there's wrongdoing?
Well,
What are you trying to figure out the wrongdoing is in it?
what I'm saying, and the point I'm trying to make is, why change something if it isn't posturing? Why change it? It's worked. I just don't, and you wonder why there's suspicion. There's suspicion because it's being suggested to change it when it's been this way for years. So, you know, Danny, if the government tells you something and you question it, that doesn't mean that you're wrong. You have the right to question it, the same as I do. I have the right to question it.
Right, and I'm just only stating my point of view on the situation, that I don't believe that Dave is suggesting this for any rhyme or reason to try to persuade a vote one way or another.
No, that's nothing to do with that.
That is what I'm saying.
Right, and I just want to be clear, I wasn't the one that mentioned it, and I don't care. I mean, I always end up voting early, but it wasn't me, and
No,
you know, I
it wasn't.
voted both
This
ways
was
with both sides before, so I like
this
that I don't.
was me. Okay,
Yeah.
I put it on the agenda because it was a light agenda. I thought, okay, I'm just going to throw it out there. This has been something that's on my mind. Can we do it this way? If it causes that much consternation, let's just move on. Okay? I mean, it's not a hill I'm going to die on and ever. So, and given that, well, in fact, you know what? I'll withdraw my consideration request for the board to consider it at this time. So, we'll move on now to the building project discussion on building project options. Well, let me go first. I've been thinking about this elementary type project for 7 years now, frankly. Ever since the high school project, and we knew there was an elementary, something looming someday. And I've thought about the type of project, and I've just a number of factors have come to get kind of gelled in my mind that at this point I don't favor a major project anymore. You know, we don't know where the enrollment's going to go. If it continues to decline, in 5 to 8 years, the Valley may not be sustainable as a school, and it may have to, you know, close just because the numbers are low in and of themselves. And if that's a factor, that'll be a real-time factor that the board at that time will see the obvious, and it'll become obvious what to do. Right now, the numbers are high enough to sustain a building and the operation of a building. So the cost savings, I don't know that they're going to cover the millage increase needed for the project, so there's uncertainty there in my mind. With the current construction demands and labor issues and all which spell out higher costs right now than maybe we want or should be. Supply chain issues, we don't know when those are going to finally settle down. The interest rates aren't bad, but they probably aren't as favorable as we wish. So just for those reasons, I don't propose a major project. I don't favor a major project. And actually, what I think we should do is just do air conditioning in both schools, and then if there's any serious mechanical issues or electrical issues, remedy any serious issues. But beyond that, I favor an air conditioning project for both schools, and we'll move on. So that's my thoughts on where the project, what it should look like. Others?
Can we just do the air conditioning, Dave, without doing, are we mandated to do other upgrades when you do that? Or?
Well, that's time for a good question, and the man is here, and Scott, what if we say, hey, AC only in both buildings?
It's kind of a fine line when you do what's called a maintenance upgrade under the code, then no, depend on the local code official where they draw that line of a maintenance versus a renovation. But certainly even if you were to do a larger scale project, there's certain things that you're grandfathered in, you don't have to necessarily upgrade anyway. But it would be that, where does that line fall? Certainly we talked about, not Lowestoft, thank you, that you would have to do, electrical service upgrade, to support the, air conditioning load. So certainly that would be a little bit larger undertaking, but, I think it would be a code official's interpretation. Is that a maintenance upgrade or is it, a full renovation project?
There'd have to be electrical upgrades at the Valley also, correct?
The
Valley's electrical from 1968.
Well, no, I'm talking service. So I think the service out there is capable of handling, I have to get back to the full report, but the panels, yeah, certainly upgrading the electrical panels and switch gear and stuff like that in the building, but in the other instance, you have to, there's not enough electrical service to the building, so you have to do off-site electrical improvements and proper electric service to the building. But yeah, any HVAC project would institute, changing out some of the panels, the electrical panels, and stuff like that.
Do we know what it would cost to do air conditioning in both buildings? What the total cost would be?
We didn't put together that as an option, so I don't have the cost off the top of my head, but that's something we can certainly prepare as a cost option.
I'd want to make sure that it's not too much to spend just on that versus doing one of the options. I want to see how much lower that comes in.
Randy, what'd you say the yearly savings would be if the Valley was closed?
I don't have it with me right now. Let me look. Go on and then I'll get it, okay?
Scott, the sheets on the facility study, they say that for the Valley building system, the HVAC, 1.6 to 1.8 million. Now I know there's electrical that probably, well, would the HVAC include electrical, or is the electrical going to be segregated?
The electrical will be separate.
Okay.
So in that cost to upgrade, the other thing I also caution you about that, you can't just take certain line items from there and say, all right, here's what it costs, because it doesn't include, that's not a full project cost for design and permitting and, full construction service and things like that. So I caution you about pulling just line items out of there. But no, the HVAC and that cost to upgrade, the electrical and that cost to upgrade was listed separate. And if you go to, I think there's some notes on that in the whole study.
Yeah, when you gave us the breakdown, Scott, for the Valley, you had HVAC 1.5 million, 1.8, and then you had electrical 1.4 million to 1.6.
That was for full comprehensive renovation.
Okay.
So if you're
But the
talking,
HVAC, would that alone be a ballpark figure then if we were?
for just the HVAC portion, yeah, but that included more than just air conditioning. So it's just, it included, depending on the building, there were other things that you would be renovating in that. The other thing to think about with an HVAC project, they get challenging because if you're going to be replacing, or providing all the ductwork for the HVAC flow, things like that, then you're up in the ceilings and you're tearing down all the ceilings. So now you're replacing all the ceilings. While you're doing that, you do the lighting as well. So it gets to be that, where do you, on a project like that, where do you draw the line? That.
So Scott, if the HVAC and electrical, they're 1.8 and 1.6 max, would we be looking at, I understand what you're saying, but it couldn't conceivably be worse than the 3.4 million you know, of those two higher end numbers, right, for an HVAC only project at the Valley? I mean,
Once again, I think I'd have to go back through and look at that number, because you can't just take that HVAC, you gotta take the ceiling, you know, you replace the ceilings, you gotta do the electrical.
yeah,
Controls are part of that on the electrical side as well, so
yeah.
we could certainly put together a HVAC only project option cost.
Well, board members, who, is anybody still favoring a more major project, and, you know, speak to what's on your mind about it?
I have Ron's information. The Bateman's utility saving is around $110,000 annually. And, what I had said at the last meeting is when we originally proposed, when we originally started all this stuff back in July of 2020, our personnel savings was looking at being $290,000. But now, with everything going on with COVID and trying to add positions and stuff, I didn't take any of that into account. I just did the 110.
But Brandy, I don't understand that, because we're paying the money for that to the staff now. So.
But it's not savings. It wouldn't be money cut from them. So back when we were looking at it in 2020, in 2020, we thought by combining into one building, we could make classroom sizes even across the board. Because a lot of times you'll have larger classrooms and then smaller classrooms, so we'll have to hire a one-year teacher to balance out, or, you know, we have to move stuff around and try to balance classrooms a lot. So it eliminates having to do that. Plus, you know, we have double staff then. So we eliminate a lot of that double staff if you go down to one building.
Through like furloughs or severances, or are you trying to do it through retirement?
Retirements mainly, yeah.
Okay.
You would try, it would be a lot easier, especially coming out of COVID, if that was a direction you wanted to go, to keep them on a little bit long, you know what I mean, and let just the retirements go through, because right now we need the staff. Like, we can't get subs, we can't, you know, there's a whole bunch of things that are out there that we kind of really don't want staff to leave it, you know.
I guess, Dave, I'm in the other camp. I'm looking at, with the latest enrollment projections, you know, it just seemed pretty clear cut that they don't see anywhere on the horizon that we're gonna buck the trend of going down.
Right, I agree.
You know, even looking at incorporating all of the homeschooled and the cyber school kids in, we still have a extra capacity of over 200. If we, you know, looking at what would the capacity that would exist if we went with an expansion at later. In looking at the cost breakdown that we got from Scott, you know, the most attractive one from a cost standpoint was closing the valley and expanding later. That was option 3, and it gave an estimate anywhere from 16.5 to 18 million. And looking at the information that Brandy gave us then, that borrowing 15 million, when I saw that the debt was only going to be extended about 5 more years from current, that we would in essence be debt free by 2041, and looking at tax increases in the first year, 0.12 mils, second year 0.25, third year 0.28, those are all accomplishable within, I think, our normal budget. And the fact that we will have a few million from our capital reserve that we can use, I just didn't see a reason why we wouldn't start to pursue it and look at, okay, to the point where we get bids, and of course, yeah, we're seeing bids that are coming in at 20 million. Well, obviously, oh, we can't do it, so we're gonna reject those. But to move us along, and I'll come back to when Ron asked the question of Brandy, and the cost savings, I thought the figure was around 100,000, but it's 100,000 a year. So suddenly that comes back into your budget, and there's no one-time savings, it's every year. And eventually we get in where there's other maintenance requirements, you know, on that building that wouldn't be incurred then. So I don't look at it as the money we're saving by closing the valley is gonna pay for our borrowing, but it's going to put a significant cut into our annual costs. Enough so that we're going to be able to, again, maybe have a manageable budget, and it's year after year after year. I just saw all these things favorable in the sense of a short-term extension of the debt, no big tax increases, in fact, being able to accomplish it in 3 years.
Dale, you do realize that those no big tax increases you're talking about are just to cover the payments on the bonds. There's gonna be other tax increases that are gonna be needed just for operating expenses, for
Yes.
Unfunded mandates, for salaries going up, for healthcare going up. So those
And
little increases you're talking about aren't gonna be little.
They're all gonna be manageable within a, we have the index that we're allowed to go to is about 0.7 mils now, I believe, right, Randy?
Sure it is.
So I'm looking at, you know, on any of these 3 given years, there's a $0.5 mil to handle, what wage increases would be coming along, what added maintenance costs, you know, would be in there. And there's also gonna be untold savings on the personnel side that we're not even factoring in here. I guess I'm coming from the standpoint that it just seems deserving of us to take a very serious look now at it. The negative for me is the environment we're in right now, in the sense of materials, construction costs, and we won't know what that is until we actually go out to bid and see what those numbers come back in. I mean, Scott's given us a best estimate of where he thinks we should land, and usually, well, I imagine there's just a little bit of buffer in there that the hope is we're going to be underneath where those estimates are. No guarantee, but the hope would be. But until we would actually pursue the process, we just wouldn't see. And I just see such an immense benefit to this district to be able to house all of our K through 4 in one building. Everybody is on the same playing field. Those kids have the same facility in terms of the dining area, the indoor area where you can do activities in the multi-purpose room. And the advantages from the teacher's perspective, again, being able to have all of the 4th graders on one site and talk about curriculum issues is, to me, such a distinct advantage that we don't have now.
You do realize that just because the Act 1 index says we can raise taxes to a certain point, doesn't mean we should.
I'm not saying we should, but if we're taking on a building project among other things, then there is a more likelihood that that's where we're going to have to go. But I think it's all accomplishable. Again, it's still staying on the index. And that, in any given year, becomes the overriding goal. Yeah, we'd like to be underneath, and I don't know, maybe it would be. I just feel that looking at the contracts we've been settling, seeing what type of increase is anticipated over the next few years, and looking again at a very small millage increase that would, yes, handle that additional cost that we're going to have for our borrowing. It just, to me, the time is right to at least investigate it to the degree of seeing where it would actually, what the actual cost would be.
Scott, I've got a feedback that when you speak, you can't be heard because you're not near a mic. Can you step up to the podium? All right, to take any one of those options to a point where it could actually be bid at some level, I mean, you're gonna need a schematic design of some type. They can't just.
Yeah, well, you'll basically take it all the way through construction documents, a full bidding package, and that's probably the, 8 to 12 month design period that we talked about before. Just hearing some of the conversation, of course, we don't know where things are gonna go. If somebody asked a year ago, do you project that construction costs would skyrocket more than they have in the past 30 years, then no one would have said it, yes. But we have built some inflation into the estimates of where we think it's gonna somewhat calm down, but we don't know. To Dale's point, we don't know what's gonna happen, but what we do know is that it's not going back down, So 2 years from now or 3 years from now, it's not gonna be cheaper than it is now. So that is a definite, and we do know as well that the Fed's gonna be continuing to raise rates, so you're as you go on, and you can talk to your financial advisor about this as well, but the longer you look in the future, the more you're gonna have a higher bond rate, so that's gonna factor on how much you can do and borrow as well.
Scott, I'd like to see on option 8, where what Dave suggested, upgrading HVAC and putting air conditioning in both elementary schools. One question I do have with that, though, when you say HVAC, you're talking about the heat also, correct?
Well, yeah, we know we have the humidity. Well, where do you want to define the line? Obviously, if you're going to be providing air conditioning in there, you're providing an all new system in there. So with that new system, you would provide a new heating system too, with active humidity control and things like that. The question always gets to be where you draw the line, and from when we started this way back talking 6 years ago, we all know the Valley has a lot more need, so it's where do you draw that line? Is it just HVAC? Do you tackle some of the other need? I always say there's 2 different ways to come in a project. One is define all the things you want to do, and we can say, all right, how much is it going to cost? Or you say, here's what we want to spend, and we can say, here's what you can do for that amount of money. So I think if you're going to focus, if Loyalsock's going to be a building within the district for the foreseeable future, you should consider not just the HVAC, but it's at that point where do you draw a line of how much else you do? Because we all know there's a lot more work that needs done up there.
Well, 2017, when we were gonna do the maintenance building, that was a cost of what, 95,000? What did we just approve to have it done for 6 years later?
160.
170?
Of the roof.
So, I mean, nothing's gonna change as far as driving prices. So when you look at, from that standpoint of paying an additional 70 grand over 6 years, what's that look like on paper?
You do realize we didn't bid that out either.
Who was gonna, why wasn't it bid out?
Good question. I questioned that, if you remember. And I was told that we like Technologies, what's the name of the company? Something Technology. We like them, so, and they're on state contract, so that's what we went with.
Well, regardless of that, doesn't mean that somebody would have came in even more money or less money, but still the bottom line is that as we keep marching forward, we're not gonna see anything happen where the bottom's gonna drop out and you're gonna be getting stuff at a at a price you got 6 years ago, and 6 years from now, who knows where it's gonna be. That's the bad part about not knowing where they are. Plus, as long as districts and states run the way they run, and they, you know, they go to the lowest bidder, I've always had a problem with the way things are run on a district level with the people's money, to provide them with new schools or, you know, maintenance. I look at the old high school and, you know, we really messed up on that whole deal because we should have never been doing renovation after renovation after renovation for 5 decades to put a Band-Aid on something that was never gonna be functional for what the needs were of these kids going to school. And we kept doing that. We kept knocking down the ideas of what we could do, outside of this area, you know, developing a whole platform for all the schools to be in one area. You know, that was denied. So we have nobody to blame but ourselves for the situation that we're in today. But then we don't have a crystal ball either, so I just don't see where you're gonna put electrical and you're gonna put HVAC in at 2 different schools. I mean, at a minimum of, like he's talking about, you're gonna end up going in there, you're gonna end up replacing ceilings, you're gonna end up making more renovations than what's expected in the bid, and it's gonna drive the price up, and by the time you're done, you're gonna say, okay, it's gonna cost us $10 million to provide what we're gonna provide at these 2 schools, and you're looking at option 3, which is, you know, at 18, and I don't wanna see this district spend any more money, I don't wanna see taxes go up, but we as a board and a community are responsible for 3 things. And that is the education our kids are getting, that is the buildings and grounds, and that is trying to be as fiscally responsible as we can. So, you know, if we keep looking into it, we need to. I just don't see what the gain is in putting 10 million into something that you know that you're gonna end up spending more than that for upkeep on other things as you move forward after the fact, even if you do put air in these places. There's gonna be things, and then you look at the valley, like, I don't wanna see the valley go either, but the functionality of it. You don't have a gym, you don't have a cafeteria per se, I mean, it's old as the hills, you know, and it needs to be upgraded. I mean, you're gonna dump till you're done. If you wanted to refurbish that place out there and do what you need to do over the next 20 years, you're gonna spend a lot more money out there than you are, you know, versus, you know, God forbid, having to close it down. We have retirements coming up in the next 5 years. So you're gonna have quite a few retirements. You got retirements coming up in the next 2 to 3 years. So, you know, if you're gonna hit this, and you're gonna do this, and you're gonna give the district the best savings that you can, you gotta hit it at the right time. So we're not, you know, trying to find places to put people, you know, on the staff and, you know, and replacing or having to move them because you have no choice but to do that. So there's, you know, I wanna be open-minded, I don't wanna be narrow-minded about the idea of doing what we can to get air in these places, but when it comes to the dollar, if you could do it for $750,000 at both places, I'd probably say, yeah, let's do it, but that's not gonna happen.
So Danny, you're saying if you're gonna do it at all in the next 5 to 7 years, now is the time, because you're just gonna end up costing?
I mean, the bottom line is you're not gonna build a house for $125 a square foot today. You're gonna build a house for $350 a square foot, $250 a square foot. So, and you're talking just over a period of 7, 8 years. I don't know if the valley is in good enough shape, you know, because you're gonna end up with the same thing you ended up here with this high school, with the old high school. It's gonna be the same, you know, no, don't get me wrong, I think that valley, I've walked through the valley, I've been in it. You know, the biggest issue is with that is keeping the humidity and keeping things down where it has to be. And we have to remember that thing every year is inspected, it's approved. It isn't something that is in dire straits to the point where we've gotta pull the trigger on doing something with it. I mean, if it was, we definitely would be getting slapped with something from codes. We'd be getting slapped with something from, you know, the people who inspect it every year for air quality. We don't see anything. So if we're not seeing anything, then what's the problem?
And I think I looked at Danny on option 2, that's where we were trying to upgrade both facilities so that they're both on an even playing field. And the cost on that was 21 to 23 million. And that's why, to me, option 3, which was 16 to 18, is putting the money, expansion into one building. And that was the affordable option, again, to put all these kids into the same facility. We can either do it separately, say 21 to 23, or we can do it in one building. Again, the kids out the valley deserve to have the same level of facility as the kids at Later.
As for the valley, every facility study that has been done, the last 3 or 4, the valley, the bones of the valley are good. It's not the building, it's not the building, it's the infrastructure in the building, correct?
Infrastructure and some of the programming, like the gym and secure vestibule and kitchen, things like that, yeah.
But the bones of the valley,
Right, the
the
structure
building
itself.
itself,
Yep.
is a good building.
Well, I'm not gonna argue that. I mean, I've been in it. As old as that building is, it's in great shape. It really is, but at the end of the day, I don't know if it's a wise thing to take, like Dale's saying, and put $22 million into the lighter building and put the other into the valley and, you know, call it a day and still have the upkeep of 2 buildings. And meanwhile, as we discuss that, your enrollment is declining.
Slowly, yes it is. But the valley's been neglected how many years?
Yeah, and in time to stop neglecting it is right now.
Yeah. Do some
And that's
upgrades to
that's
it.
the 16 to 18 million dollar project, and stop the bleeding. If we continue to just try and put Band-Aids on an older building, it's to get everything on a level playing field in terms of a facility that kids can be educated in. Option 3 is the option we need to look at as a board.
Dale, you just heard, the building bones are good bones.
But
But what
Ron,
is it- what is
the
service
bones
of it?
are great for a nursing home, but
Oh,
not, but not for a K-4 facility. To upgrade to that, that's where suddenly now, we're talking to out there and later, you're talking 21 to 23 million. Well, I'm saying, I don't wanna spend that much money. I wanna spend 16 to 18 million and get an upgraded facility that all the kids can be housed in, and they'll all participate and get value out of the same facility.
good. You wanna spend 16 to 18 million, upgrade the valley and
Ron, no.
later?
No.
I don't know how
That's
you
gonna
can
cost
upgrade.
us 21 to 23. Now, you can,
Option 1,
yeah, option 1 doesn't do it, Ron. All it does, it brings HAB, the electrical, but it doesn't do the expansion in the cafeteria. It doesn't get you, inside gym area, like in a multi-purpose room. The facility still is lacking. And so, if, why spend on option 1 which is, 16 to 18 million. If you want to upgrade the facility, get the cafeteria up to grade, and the multi-purpose room, you're at 21 to 23 million. And I'm saying, nope, I'd much rather spend 16 to 18 million and have all of that upgraded facility at one site.
What I said about the 5 to 8 years and the decline, one of the reasons I say that is I think there's going to be a point in the foreseeable future where the enrollment for the district-wide is going to be low enough that you could actually move the students to lighter and not have to expand lighter. Or if you expanded lighter, you might only add a little bit of a 4-room jog on the end of the one building, and that's a whole lot, less money. One could say, why are you going to spend $4 million to put air conditioning, HVAC upgrade it at the Valley? And I guess I would say that, yeah, that is an expense. We'll recoup that perhaps a little bit through energy efficiency, but that will make that building more saleable in 8 years from now. When it has a HVAC system that's not very old, it definitely will be more marketable because, the building has a history of being damp, and this makes it much more marketable. So that's why I'm thinking just, yes, pushing it down the road, and just let the facts at that time are going to scream and shout, we can't sustain a building with 100 kids in it. It doesn't make any sense. We can bring them all, in town and maybe add a little bit to later, maybe not, but. So that's why I'm more inclined to just, get the buildings right from a cooling standpoint. Scott, from that standpoint, you can have independent cooling and heating systems. You don't have to have an integrated system, right?
Right, but if you're going to do the expense of providing air conditioning and rooftop units and all that, your other pieces of your heating system are also failing, so it doesn't make sense to run keep a failing system online that you're going to be spending money on to repair over the years and have a new system side by side. So to do a little bit more in the forced air, if you're providing, once again, the forced air for the cooling, you're just talking about adding some, we haven't gotten into the system, what type of system, but it's adding some boilers for the heat piece of it. Adding some going to 4-pipe versus, there's a bunch of different ways to look at it, but it's not significant. And we wouldn't advise against just doing a separate AC system and having your existing heating.
Scott, what's the heat system like at Lighter?
Lighter, I think, let me go to that report. I think it's in fairly good condition. The issue was, once again, when you go to provide the air conditioning, it changes over the type of system, but let me just pan to that in the report real quick. Sorry, it's a long report, gotta get that right later. Yeah, I think there was some terminal unit, like if you weren't adding air conditioning there, I think some terminal units, meaning you have unit ventilators, which are through-wall units, almost like that. But some of those terminal units are nearing their end of the useful life, so it's definitely replacing some of those. The classroom unit ventilators with new units, that's what our engineer recommended. Getting a proper control system for it. I think the library unit, the air handler unit in the library had some issues that needed addressed. And then really, I think I'm just browsing through here. I think the rest of it was more tied to the AC part of it. Providing, once you provide AC, your existing system can't just be retrofitted with air conditioning. Yeah, then there was some, your hot water boilers are moving on to other items, the, heating hot water boilers and recirculating pumps, the recommended changing those out to high efficiency condensing type boilers, so that ties into the heating system. So going with the more high efficiency unit there, that those are ending their useful life. And then I think there were some exhaust fan issues.
Well, can we get a price on?
Yeah. Of just, yeah, the question is, I think, where do you, is it just strictly HVAC, air conditioning item, or do you do other things? You know, we all know like the casework's falling apart and some other, so where do you draw the line at somewhere, or is it just strictly HVAC? We can certainly put together what you wanna look at, but I think it's defining that scope.
Well, that will take care of itself when you're figuring that out, because you're gonna have requirements, make sure that you have the requirements out of the valley to be able to handle, like you were saying with the electricals.
Yeah, out of the valley, the service itself didn't need upgraded. If the service income at the site was adequate, it was, you know, you replace some of the panels and electrical work associated with that. But we could certainly provide a cost estimate for the construction of a HVAC renovation project. My only question would be, is that it, or do you bite off some of the other issues out there? Not necessarily, you know, adding gyms and things like that, but some of the other existing, you know, if you look through that report, there was a lot of other.
Well, I think it would be a matter of what the cost is for doing the HVAC to see
Where you're at.
where we're at with that number.
We can certainly put together an option. It looks like HVAC, it only.
We have.
Before we start to move
Yeah.
and ask Scott to do more studies,
Yeah.
I really think we need to see, is the board
Right.
willing to move ahead on a bigger project?
Right.
And if not, then call our attention
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
start to see what we're gonna do less. But I don't want us to go any further. I want us to have a direction
Right.
and start moving on it.
Well, I think we have two things facing us. One is, you know, I'm talking, Ron and I are talking HVAC project, pretty much that's about it. I mean, if there's some critical items that you gotta do, then you do them. But beyond that, no. No more window dressing, just HVAC. Then the other option is there a preferred option for other board members? Because I'm not hearing from some, but I guess it's time for the others to weigh in and let us know what you're thinking. I mean.
Well, if you're gonna put air conditioning and stuff out there, you're doing it later too.
Oh, absolutely.
You're not gonna
Oh,
do
absolutely.
one without the other.
Oh, no, I agree, yeah, that's
So-
absolutely. I
So,
wouldn't-
with
yeah.
that being said, in order for us to move forward, I would entertain getting the numbers back on what it would cost to do both places before we do anything. Before we choose that option 3 or that option 2 or whatever. I think we owe it to ourselves to at least see what that little bit entails.
All right, so there's 3 of us, but that's not consensus, so, board.
I took some notes from the,
And I'm fine with that.
Oh.
I just don't want us continuing to pick it on down.
Right.
And we're into March, we're into April.
Yeah, no, and you're right, Dale, because Scott told us that when we get to April, May at worst, if we haven't picked something, we're not building in 2024, we're building in 2025, right, Scott?
Yeah, you'll miss that first
Yeah.
window
So-
of
So
summer
we
construction.
have to pick a project, well, we would have to pick one of these options, 1 through 7, by May at absolute worst case.
Or 8.
Well,
Yeah, if you wanted to start construction next year.
8 might
next
not be
summer.
so bad.
Hit that first summer, yeah.
Would 8 have the implications that the 1 through 7s have?
You mean as far as, yeah, especially any renovation project, you wanna do as much over that summer as possible. So it doesn't make sense to start that project in the middle of the school year, because now you're gonna be on top of kids doing, unless, you know, you could always start a project that has additions somewhat in the middle, but you wanna take advantage of as much of the summers as possible. So if it's a renovation only project especially, you'd wanna, you know, start that. If the goal is to have it started by next summer, then or next year, then yeah, you wanna bid it ahead to get that first summer of construction in 2023. If not, then you'd look at probably pushing it down a little bit and not start the renovation-only scenario until 2024 summer.
Well, Board, would you be interested in seeing the HVAC only costing, or are you really, it's gonna be one of these 1 through 7s? What's your thinking? And David, you're gonna speak, go ahead.
I would be a 1 through 7 guy, to answer your last question first. But the notes I took last time he was here, and I'm sort of leaning towards the cost upgrade, was SOC was 7 to 8 million, lighter was 5 to 6 million. So if you take the higher end, 8 and 6 is 14, and 3 million in capital funds, that takes us down to 11. And we're getting 2 buildings that are upgraded significantly.
But you know, Dave, you're not doing the cafeteria, you're not doing the multipurpose out there.
I understand that.
So, and you're not doing a lot of the other programming with that.
I understand that.
What you're doing, you're saying to those kids out at the valley, hey, yep.
We've said it to everyone since it's been open.
You've got air conditioning now, but you know, there's some programs that we're doing better at the other facility.
And I'm not saying you're wrong. What I'm saying is all the other people that have come through it, I think they're okay. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a different service, I understand it, and that's what we're here for, provide a service to the taxpayers and how to best spend their money. That's the key. And how can we give the kids the best facilities and education possible? And do we want to add 30 minutes to each kid's day by bringing them down here? Do we want to add 30 minutes to each parent's day by bringing them down here, or have a parent come pick them up, be added? You take that out over 180 days, that adds up. And I'm not saying it's not a factor to some, or it wouldn't be a factor to some, but I think it is, especially when you're talking about maybe a bad road and someone has to drive that extra 5 to 7 miles to come pick their kid up versus at the valley. So I understand the equal amenities for each district, I got that, but some kids go to Catholic school and don't have the same amenities that a public school has, and they get along, and then when they integrate back into the school, to the middle school level, everything's okay.
Yes,
So,
I'm just saying, I think
there's,
where we have the potential to level the playing field. If we don't wanna take it, then that's fine. I'm okay.
well, I don't think
I'm
we're having a disservice to the kids now. Okay, that's what we have, and that's what we've been handed. Okay, and we've been pretty much grandfathered into that. And so if I would build a barracks, say a new Lamar barracks, it's not going to be the same as the Milton barracks, and it's not going to be the same as the Mansfield barracks, because there's different needs there. Okay, if we can get some of those needs incorporated to bring them together and somewhat on an equal playing field within the numbers that are provided here, that would be great. And I don't disagree with you, but I'm just saying that I'm leaning more towards getting two buildings upgraded versus one and disrupting the entire.
Is your average correspond to?
And I understand, Dave, and that's, I just want to make sure we move forward.
I do think the teachers out at the valley do everything that they can to give those kids the same opportunity as the teachers give their kids at Leiter. I think they do a great job. They might not have a full-size gym, but the teachers out there do their best to give those kids out there the same opportunities.
Just real quick, I wanted to clarify one item. I think you mentioned some numbers that were taken from the cost to upgrade spreadsheets. Remember, those aren't project costs. Those don't include a full project cost. So if you're correlating that to an option, it would be, I think it was option one. Oh, option one with the lesser addition. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
So option 1 is the same amount of money to keep the 2 schools open, but don't have all the programming needs at the valley. So we're spending the same amount of money as if we would do option 3. So, if you're asking for our opinion right now, I think I'm leaning towards option 3, to bring all the kids together. And besides just educational needs, I'm thinking about mental health with the division that occurs sometimes at the middle school when the kids have been separated, and then the Valley kids might feel like they're meant to feel less. But if they're all together over elementary school, that might get rid of some of that and get rid of some of the bullying that we see in the middle school. That's just my thought process. But I do hear what Dale is saying and what Danny is saying, and I don't want to put money into Band-Aids. And if we don't fix the Valley, down the road, you're gonna wanna add the gym then and add the cafeteria then, and I'm not sure it will configure well. And we're spending the same amount of money for option 3 versus option 1. So we're not saving any money.
Others?
But Brandy, the assessment you made on the savings out at the Valley, how is there wiggle room in that? Quite a bit, I would think, in there.
Yeah, like one of the major factors is the oil.
What do we spend a year in oil up there?
30 to 60,000 depending on the winter and the price of oil.
30 to 60,000 a year.
Yes.
For oil. What's the electric out there?
I'd have to look at it. I have that all priced out for several years, so that doesn't really go up, and I figured what kind of we were spending on electric out there. I figured we'd have about 80% of that cost still in here in lighter, because you're adding more lights down here. Yes, they're gonna be more energy efficient, but I only put like a savings of 20% from the electric, because I didn't wanna say, oh, we're gonna have all this savings and not have it. So my savings number is conservative.
Right.
So, cause I don't wanna persuade, but yeah, so the number is conservative, yes, when we looked at it.
And then what are the options for the district as far as the sale of it, the reuse of it? What are we capable of being able to do with it if it was not used to house students?
As far as we could sell it, but that'd be, if someone bought it, they would develop it to whatever they were purchasing it for.
What would our options be to keep it as a district and utilize it for something else? Is there options in that?
Not sure what, with declining enrollment, I'm not sure what other use an educational entity would have for an empty building. I don't know what we.
I didn't know if there was something we could utilize it for something else and keep it as a district to possibly bring in revenue.
As we shrink down.
Perfect, the storage.
Unless you turn it into
storage.
business, and I don't know more. I'm sure there are plenty of rules around. That's the business.
I just feel like you just need to exhaust every angle of it. I get what Mr. Young is saying, but in the same token, I just can't wrap my head around the idea that you would drop, that kind of money into a place out there and still have no gym, still have no cafeteria, basically. I don't know how that angle of it, and don't get me wrong, I think that all my kids went to the Valley, I went to the Valley, and none of us are any worse for wear. Teachers were awesome. This has nothing to do with how well somebody teaches or getting behind it. This has to do with everything with what we need to do as a district for the people in the community and being fiscally responsible.
Yeah, I can't imagine there's a big market for aren't there tons of unsold elementary schools, or, unless you could get like an approved private school to buy it, for whatever kids who can't be
I think I brought that up before when we discussed, when this was all first brought up, East Lycoming, what are they, I mean, I know they have schools all over the place. And, I'm not sure, you know, isn't there one out Pitcher Rocks way? There's one out there. Where's another one there? I mean, they got elementary schools.
They got 2 elementary schools.
Right, and there's still both, they have 3?
I think they have 3 that are open still, don't they?
And they're all open,
Yeah.
so, you know, we're not alone, we're not ever gonna be alone. We're ahead of the curve a lot more than what the other districts are when it comes to our facilities and what we're doing. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna vote for whatever is gonna be most fiscally responsible for us in the district. I don't like the idea of all those, you know, K through 4 being under one school over there. I mean, that kinda deters me a little bit as far as room and space. I mean, cause that would be kinda crazy maybe, but then, I don't know, I mean, that's the one side of it that I don't really like about option 3. It's just having the congestion, because it's gonna be a little different, for sure, so. But we have decisions to make and don't seem like we got a whole lot of time.
I think we have 2 months to decide which project we want to push forward. Would border, I mean, we only have 3 that are interested in seeing what an HVAC project is. Are there any others that say, yeah, why not on that? Just to get a baseline number, anybody else interested?
I don't think we heard to get
Can't
a
hurt to
number,
get
yeah.
All right, so we'll at least get a baseline, all right. All right, Scott, would you get us a baseline number on an HVAC project? And maybe there's a couple line items that's, hey, we strongly recommend do this if you're gonna do that, you know?
Well, we'll start with the HVAC and what's required for electrical, things like that, some of the ceilings, obviously. And then you'll have that number, if that's the direction we'll go, I think then you can start to say, all right, what other things you wanna bite off, rather than us trying to recommend one thing over another. You know, I think prioritization might need to come from internal.
But that includes AC for lighter as well, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
And actually, I was, when, in the description of the, in the study, in the written form, we did have a line item for the replacement of the HVAC system at Lighter, including electrical upgrades. Now, caveat, this was way back when we originally did the report, we didn't escalate that number because it was in the narrative, it wasn't in the cost to upgrade, but that was about 3.2 million, somewhere around there. And that was just for the HVAC and electrical. So there'd be a little more, and that was just construction cost, not a project cost. So just to put it in frame of reference, we'll come back to the project cost for that.
Okay. Board, anything else on it? We have to pick a project, but we'll get a baseline on the HVAC, and then we'll, maybe the work session then in March. We'll plan to revisit this in the work session in March. Okay? All right.
Do you want the financial advisor here for the work session in March?
Well,
So you have numbers to know what it's gonna cost you in taxes and stuff.
I mean, to me, yeah, that'd be fine, but I think we're more about what is the kind of project each
Okay.
individual wants, and we have these ballpark numbers.
Okay.
The only thing that will translate into is, you know, millage and borrowing and all that. I mean, that's important, of course, but, I mean, I'm okay with that, but,
I think
maybe it's a month too early.
We could certainly share that option 8 with them ahead of time, the financial, and, you know, if there's a desire, you know, it sounds like it's not like I hear a lot of other options in here. It sounds like it's 1, 2, or 3, or 8. So, I mean, I don't think it would be out of the question just to have a couple scenarios for each of the options to, once again, help in anything that, get all the information out there and help in the decision-making process of a couple different scenarios.
Do you want me just to present it like I did last time, or do you want them actually here? That's just what I need to know, because I'll have to schedule them ahead of time.
Okay. What will they, I guess, what will they show us that, more than what you'd be able to show us?
You would just be getting the information from them instead of me.
On the,
A lot of times it's helpful, a lot of times it's helpful to ask them questions on, you know, where do you see the markets going, blah, 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 you know, what the bond rates are, and, you know, you can
Okay.
ask them,
All right,
they're,
yeah.
you know,
Sure.
they do this for a living, they do school financing for a living, and they'd be able to bring other knowledge to the table or answer additional questions, if that's what you wanted to do.
Sure, I mean, I guess it doesn't cost us anything, does it? But no, okay, sure.
Quick question, what do we have in the capital fund balance to put towards this project? Has that been discussed at any length?
Well, when we do the paybacks, we'll have about 5 million, right?
Correct.
And then we're thinking maybe some can go into it next year,
I
additional?
would like to, once the audit is finalized, I have a motion for the board to move more money over into the capital to start to help with the project. So my initial thinking, just my thoughts, that I would share with you would be that we would have about 3 million
For use for the project?
for use for the project, and then it would keep us between 2.5, 3 million in our capital for other things and just, you know, emergencies and that kind of stuff. And for roofs and, you know, things that come up that we need. But those are just my thoughts. Of course, you guys could use the whole capital if you'd like, but I wouldn't recommend it. I mean, you
But
want to
that's a
keep
ballpark figure that you have
Right.
right now, that's fairly accurate.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Brandy, do you have an estimate on what you possibly are going to come to the board with to move into the capital reserve?
After the auditors have finished the audit, I will share that with everyone, yes.
You don't have an estimate right now on,
I'm not something that's finalized now.
okay.
Somewhere between 1/2 and 1.5.
Yes.
So is there, do we want to maybe get a little direction for the financial advisors on which couple of options they might want to come with financial, rather than, you know, I don't think they want to do all 8, I mean, they would be working all the time towards that. It sounded like, definitely the option 8 with the HAC, which we'll bring to the table, and it sounded like the,
Sound like 1 and 3 to me. Yeah, 1 and 3?
1, 3, and 8?
Okay.
And 1 and 3, I believe, are like the same costs, almost
Yeah, so
exactly.
you could, yeah.
So, did we want to look at 2 also, because that would be the upgrades?
That's more money.
So that would put them have the same type of facility, so it'd be cost for however much the AC comes in at, and then the 5 point something to 18, and then the 22 to 23, I think it is, or 24, something like that. Okay.
Are we ready to move on? Because I have a few things.
Scott, do you need anything else from us? Okay.
You don't have any more questions?
Okay. All right, okay, yeah, so the 2 discussion items are done, so, Ron, what's on your mind?
The first thing I brought up at the last board meeting, about the webinar, and I sent you all the, PowerPoint presentation at the webinar for the ESER's funding. And I brought up that, during that webinar, PSBA recommends that, the board gets, regular reports on what the money's being spent on, and an update every report, on the report, what the balance is of the ESER's fund. So, when will we be getting that, Brandy?
I do not do anything with the ESER's funding. Mrs. Basin handles that. So I would have to.
And I did
Correct
speak
that.
I did speak to her about that, and that will happen. It's not gonna happen, it didn't begin as soon as I thought it would. Gotta be careful. Yeah, there's reasons it didn't begin as soon as I was asking for it to begin. And I think we read between the lines, I think you know.
Okay, the next thing I wanna bring up is the Bus Guardian software, Randy. The app, which is, the Here Comes the Bus app, I'm a little bit concerned that that shows all the bus routes.
It doesn't show all the bus routes.
If somebody has that app downloaded and they go in that app, doesn't it show all the bus routes?
No. It shows your child's bus stop. That's why you have to register with your child's last name and their student ID number, just as you do when you register for their lunch account. And then it will allow you to set up an proximity to your bus stop. So if you want to receive a notification, say when the bus is within a mile of your house, it'll send you alert to that. But it does not show you all the stops along the way.
Okay. The other question I have related to that is, have you had any problem with that software at all?
No.
And the reason why I'm asking you is because there's people and not from Montoursville district, but there's people from other districts that have contacted me and said they're having problems with it. So I just wanted to make sure that we're not having problems with it.
We rolled it out Thursday, I believe, and, we rolled it out Thursday. By Friday, we had 50 people successfully enrolled in one question that came in, and that we were able to troubleshoot just like that. So, I did not hear of anything coming in today, and I did not get an updated number this afternoon. But as far as I'm aware, we've had no issues. I personally tested it on my children's bus route, which is a double bus run. So if it's gonna have issues, it's gonna be on that double bus run. And I see the bus every morning. I see it, I don't see it in the afternoon because I'm not home that early, but I know when it should be there. And it was running perfectly fine. So I could leave my house and get to the bus stop in time for my kids to get the bus the way I had it set up. So if parents are having problems, they can contact us and we can help them. Now, the problem with the outlining areas, and that's why we have to make it known to parents, is it works off of cell towers. Now it only has to ping, so it doesn't have to have full service. So it pings. So if your radius isn't set up large enough, you'll come into issues. So out in the rural areas, they need to set up a larger radius because it goes off of pings. And those are some of the key things that when you're talking with the parents and helping them set it up, that we'll explain. This project took a lot more than what we expected to get started because we had to redo mapping and a lot of other things. So when they call in, we can help them, and also starting next year, at the beginning of the school year, we want to educate parents on it during open houses and stuff and tell them to set it up. We sent home flyers with kids on buses on Friday that had the scan app so parents could just scan it and put it right on their phone. We did, and then we sent out the emails, and we have it on the website. So we're putting the information out there, and it is honestly very user-friendly. For someone that has problems with technology, as Sebastian will tell, I was able to successfully use it.
And the last question I have, and this is for you also, the use of facilities fees, where are we at on?
Didn't they come out? I thought they were sent out in an email.
I didn't see them.
Okay. I'll send them out.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
I thought they were sent out, so.
Can you share a little bit with us here?
I don't have them with me.
You don't know how much was it raised, or was it lowered, or was it the same, or?
It changed based on, we compared to other schools, so
Okay.
so it was a whole process that we went through. So some might be up, and we did it, honestly, that was 4 months ago at this point.
So it wasn't just based on our costs, it was also
Good,
a comparison.
where, yeah, and, you know, the cost, or the only true cost that we really, truly have is our labor,
Yes.
and that is updated to our cost.
Wait a second, you said it was done 4 months ago, yet I brought it up at the December 7th meeting and the January 11th meeting.
We finalized it at our December admin meeting.
Yeah,
And I brought it up at January 11th.
okay.
So anyway, you're gonna email it to us, I guess.
It's done.
Yeah, I thought it was already sent out, so I will email it to you tomorrow. If you don't have it to me, have it on your, just send me a reminder, but I'll try to remember to get it out first thing in the morning,
Right,
okay?
yep.
I'm sorry, I thought it actually did go out.
Okay, I'm chatting with our attorney. Board, anything else?
I brought up, I hate to bring this word up again, COVID numbers that, for the district by building. Are we gonna ever be presented with those? Or is that a secret?
I think if you went and talked to the superintendent, she'll talk with you about them. She just does not want to release them publicly. And you know, we've talked about the reason why, so.
And I'd like to piggyback on Dave's question there. I think once this district, and we should be very close to saying we're back to normal. I'm looking for that notification every day. I would like to see a historical perspective on the COVID cases we had in our buildings. That somewhere, someone has those numbers, that they can put them on a spreadsheet, but I'd be very interested in seeing, just from a historical perspective, how much actual COVID we had and the effect it had on our buildings.
And I don't think anybody on this board wants to see names, we just wanna see numbers.
Yeah, no, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Especially if it's historical, because it's in the past, there's no way to identify, you know.
Well, it should be regular reports, it shouldn't be historical, cause that's hysterical.
Well, again, the if you visit the superintendent, she'll talk with you. I mean, what can I say? Call her, schedule a meeting with her. So, that's right, and so the board, if you wanna know, go in and visit with her, okay? I don't even ask, folks. There's nothing I can do with it, so. Board members, anything else for the good of the order? All right, if not, then let's move now to final closing public comments. So we'll invite the public to come forward and offer 3 minutes unpaused.
Good evening, Greg Stout, 2011 Eagle Lane. I just want to remind members of the board, I think it's been a month or so ago. I have it up, I posted it many times, you can find it. Again, don't use Google. It's a July 12, 2021 CDC.gov post that will tell you that as of December 31st, 2021, they're no longer recommending or approving the PCR tests. Those are the tests we've been using to determine COVID-19. So as I said to you then, I'll say to you again, you're asking for numbers that have no significance whatsoever. They are based on the test that the CDC says doesn't work. So as the truth continues to come in on board, you're going to find out that we don't know the numbers for COVID-19. Okay, we just don't. That wasn't going to be my initial comment. My initial comment and my concern is, and I tell people this every day, I'll continue to tell it for as long as he gives me breath. Under Title 24 of the school code, you are a representative of the public. I realize that in America right now, we're not seeing an example of a representative republic. I hope that's gonna return soon, sooner than we think. As it is a representative republic, the words matter. What does the board feel? What do the board members feel? What you feel doesn't matter. I'm not trying to be rude to you, but you've been elected, you're a representative. I expect everyone on this board to be going to their neighbors, to be going to the coffee shops, go to Greg's, wherever you gotta go, talk to the people. You're here to do what they want to do. The question should be asked should be, what are my constituents saying to me about Oilsock Valley? Where you're at right now, and again, I hate to say this, but I think that, and we'll ask the people this, it's gonna be my recommendation we do this, I think there's a big lack of confidence in this board. I was gonna do a garage project myself. I got a little box for myself, December 2020, still haven't done it, okay? Not gonna do it because there's no reason to do it now. If you had asked me a year ago, would the inflation go where it is now, I would have told you yes. The inflation didn't go up over the last 7 to 8 years, it went up over the last 12 to 18 months. That can change, and we know that because we saw President Trump win in 2016 when nobody thought he would win. And we had independence in oil and gas, we had gas pipelines with people making money, inflation was stable. I think for anybody in this room to try to even guess what the future will be at this point is really very dangerous, and I would strongly suggest that option 8 should be do nothing. And I think that's probably what your constituents are gonna tell you they want you to do right now. Just sit tight, let's see what happens over the next 6 months to a year, not only in America, but in the world, and let's go from there. And I just want to remind the board very quickly, and I know I showed this last time, but again, I mean, this was out in the New York Times. We've been saying it all along. We've known the masks don't work, but I mean, this is January 15th, people. CDC says cloth masks don't work. Yes, I know this article recommends N95 masks. We can't do that either because it requires OSHA regulations to come into play. Then you have to have somebody here to fit the mask to the kids one by one, and again, they don't work either. It's 1 micron is what this COVID-19 has been released as, and none of those masks work, not in N95. I have a client and my wife's own sister who didn't even get COVID until they wore the N95 mask in a nursing home. Lets it in, probably doesn't let it out real well. And that one individual has permanent damage in the right lower lung because of that damage. So I just want to remind the board of that. I'm hearing about contact tracing. I unfortunately am not up to date like I normally would be to tell you that. I would say any use of masks is very dangerous. I'm actively telling parents in other school districts that are still pushing those, that if you have a case that's bad enough, you should contact myself or other attorneys that I'm working with. There's very few of us to file a Section 1983 civil action. When that action comes, and I think it probably will, I would imagine all the parents are going to be trying to see if they can make a claim to get paid from every school district that pushed masks after the December 10th decision, because now you're doing it. No one's asking you to do it. There's no mandate. There's no beam order. So just be cautious. I would strongly recommend that you go away from the mask in their entirety, and that is with regard to these major projects, I would ask your constituents what they want. I'm telling you, my vote is do nothing. Thank you.
Brenda Oberheim. So I was thinking that a lot of times we hear, well, you know, we're the board and this is who we are and this is what we do. As I've learned, you know, through this long process, you are in charge of the superintendent. If she's not giving you something that you want, you're her boss. You need to tell her, I want the numbers. He says the numbers don't matter. I don't care about the numbers. But if it's something that our board wants from our superintendent, why are you guys saying, well, she has it, ask her, we don't know. Why don't you take a vote or tell her what she needs to do? Because if that's what you want, that's what you should have. Here's a little bit of a funny, but I wish I could sell my husband on an entire house remodel. Because if we just need air conditioning, we might need a new electrical panel and ceiling. I don't know if that's gonna make sense, but let me read it, let me say it this way. I wish that I could say, I want my whole house remodeled, because if we just do the bathroom, we wouldn't know where to stop. You know, you might have to fix the walls and you might have to fix the ceiling, so we better just do the whole thing. And this is the second board meeting where we've been told that someone has tried to sell us something by saying, well, if you don't do it now, the prices are gonna go up. And like Greg had just mentioned, not necessarily. They're in a really bad place right now. Any remodel is a very bad decision to make. I definitely agree with the HVAC and the air conditioning for both buildings, but I really disagree with saying, you know, we have to do this now. I like what Dave Schimmel said, and he said we have 7 to 8 years to hold on to that building. Putting debt, we don't like, you know, the federal government pushing debt onto our children. He said the year 2041, is that correct? 2041. And he said it like really easily. I mean, some of us might not be here then, but they're very willing to push debt out to that year, and I don't think that that's fair. Thank you.
Okay. Right, seeing no one else approaching the podium, if there's nothing else for the board, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, meeting adjourned.